The Great Hall of Kefir Prime had stood for 10,000 years, carved from black stone that seemed to drink in the light and give nothing back. And within its walls the most terrifying creatures in the known galaxy gathered once every cycle to discuss matters of territory and blood and the endless hunt that defined their existence. 12 species, set upon thrones built to accommodate their monstrous forms, and each one had earned their place through millennia of proving themselves the deadliest things their worlds had ever produced. The Vractari dominated the center of the chamber, their leader Vexthos rising nearly 4 meters tall, with a body covered in natural armor that could stop plasma fire and limbs that ended in blades capable of cutting through steel. And his compound eyes reflected the dim light like shattered rubies as he surveyed his fellow predators. To his left, the Morvith ambassador coiled in a pool of its own acidic secretions, a creature that resembled a massive slug merged with a serpent, and wherever its body touched the special containment floor it hissed and smoked because its very blood could dissolve almost any known material. The Silurax representative floated in a suspension field, its pale form humanoid but wrong in ways that hurt to examine closely, and its mind reached out constantly to touch the thoughts of everyone present because its species had evolved to hunt by breaking the sanity of their prey before consuming them. There were others too, each more nightmarish than the last. Creatures with venoms that could kill in seconds, and muscles that could crush bone to powder, and senses that could track prey across continents. And together, they formed the Predator Council that had ruled this section of the galaxy for longer than most species had existed. Today, they had summoned a new species to stand. Before them, humanity had spread across dozens of worlds in the past few centuries, moving outward from their homeworld called Earth with a speed that had caught the attention of every major power. And reports had reached the Council of strange occurrences wherever humans settled. Apex predators vanished from human-occupied worlds within generations. Ecosystems restructured themselves around human presence, and even species that had dominated their planets for millions of years simply disappeared when humans arrived. The council had debated for some time about what to do with these newcomers, and finally they had decided to summon a human representative to determine if humanity was worthy of joining their ranks or if they should be eliminated as a threat. The great doors at the end of the chamber began to open, and every predator present turned their attention toward the entrance with the focused intensity of hunters who had spotted movement. What stepped through the doorway made several of them think there had been some kind of mistake. A small figure moved slowly into the chamber, using a thin stick to help support her weight as she walked, and she was perhaps the least impressive living thing any of them had ever seen. She stood barely over 1.5 meters tall, with thin limbs and pale wrinkled skin that hung loosely on her frame. And her hair was white and thin, and her eyes were hidden behind pieces of shaped glass that sat on her face. And she moved with the careful slowness of a creature whose body had begun to fail. This was Dr. Eleanor Chun, 67 years old by Earth's count, a retired xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien life forms. And she had been chosen specifically by the human government to represent their entire species before the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Vexthos rose from his throne, and the sound of his armored body shifting made several smaller predators instinctively tense. "This is your representative," he demanded, his voice like boulders grinding together in an avalanche. "We sent our summons to humanity and demanded they send their strongest warrior, their most fearsome predator, a being worthy of standing before this council, and they send us this." Eleanor finished her slow walk to the center of the chamber and looked up at the massive Vractari leader without any visible fear on her weathered face. "I am afraid there has been no mistake," she said, and her voice was soft and a little scratchy with age, but somehow it carried clearly through the vast space. I am exactly who they chose to send. The laughter that followed shook dust from the ancient ceiling. The Morvith made a wet gurgling sound that served as its species expression of amusement, while the Vracthari clicked their blade arms together in contempt. And even the normally silent Silorax projected a wave of mocking disbelief that washed over everyone present. "Humanity insults us," one of the other council members declared. A massive four-armed creature covered in spines that dripped with paralytic venom. "They mock the Predator Council by sending us their garbage. They're weak. They're dying." Eleanor simply stood quietly and waited for the laughter to fade. Her hands folded over the top of her cane, and she showed no reaction at all to their mockery. Vexthos moved closer to her, each step of his massive form making the stone floor vibrate, and he loomed over the tiny human woman like a mountain of death given form. "Do you understand what you have done, small creature?" he asked, and his voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper that was somehow more threatening than his earlier roar. "By coming here in place of a proper warrior, you have condemned your species to extinction, and you will be the first to die as punishment for this insult." "I see," Eleanor said calmly, and she reached into the pocket of her simple clothing. Every predator in the chamber reacted instantly, muscles tensing and weapon systems activating and psychic defenses snapping into place, because even the weakest prey might carry some hidden danger. Eleanor pulled out a small paper bag and opened it to reveal a handful of dried seeds inside. And she selected one and placed it in her mouth and began to chew. The tension in the room shifted into confusion. "Before you kill me," she said while still chewing on her seed, "I wonder if you might answer a question for me. You dare make requests?" Vexthos snarled. "Just one small question." Eleanor continued as if he had not spoken. "You went to all the trouble of summoning humanity before your council, which must have taken considerable effort, given how far our territory is from here. And I am curious about why." She selected another seed and ate it with the calm satisfaction of someone enjoying a pleasant snack. "What exactly is it that you want from us?" The council members exchanged glances, and something in the way this frail human woman stood before them, without trembling or begging or trying to run, made several of them feel a strange sensation they had not experienced in a very long time. It took them a moment to recognize it as uncertainty. The silence in the great hall stretched on as the assembled predators considered the small human woman standing before them. And Vexthos found himself in the unusual position of not knowing quite how to respond to a creature that should have been trembling in terror. "You truly do not know why you have been summoned?" he finally asked, and his compound eyes studied her with new attention, as if seeing her for the first time. "I have my guesses," Eleanor replied while selecting another seed from her bag. "But I find it is always better to listen than to assume." The Silorax ambassador drifted forward in its suspension field, and its telepathic voice echoed in the minds of everyone present with a cold whisper that felt like ice water dripping down the spine. "Your species has been classified as invasive," it announced. "Wherever humans establish themselves, the natural order collapses. And apex predators that ruled their worlds for millions of years simply vanish within a few generations of human arrival. We have watched your expansion with growing concern," the Morvith added, its acid hissing against the containment floor. "You are not predators in any way we understand, and yet you succeed where predators fail. And that makes you something far more dangerous." Vexthos nodded his massive head in agreement. "You are gardeners of extinction," he declared. "You do not hunt like we do. You do not kill with strength or speed or venom. And yet everything dies around you anyway. And we demand to know how this is possible." Eleanor finished chewing her seed and folded the top of her bag closed before tucking it back into her pocket. "I see," she said thoughtfully. "You are afraid of us." The reaction was immediate and violent. Vexthos slammed one of his blade arms into the stone floor hard enough to crack it, while the Morvith reared up and sprayed a mist of acid into the air. And the Silorax projected such a powerful wave of psychic aggression that several of the smaller council members staggered. "We fear nothing," Vexthos roared. "We are the pinnacle of evolution, the perfect hunters, the masters of death itself. And you are soft and slow and pathetic, and we could destroy your entire species in a single campaign. And yet you did not," Eleanor observed quietly. "You could have simply attacked us, wiped out our colonies, and salted our homeworld so nothing would ever grow there again. But instead, you summoned a representative to talk." She looked around at the assembled nightmares with something that might have been amusement in her aged eyes. "That tells me you are not certain you would win." The silence that followed her words was different from before, heavier somehow, as if she had spoken a truth that none of them wanted to acknowledge. "May I tell you a story?" Eleanor asked. "You may not," the Silorax began. But Eleanor continued as if it had not spoken. "It is about my grandmother," she said. And something in her voice changed, becoming softer but also somehow stronger. "She was born on Earth over 100 years ago, in a place that was poor and often dangerous. And she was even smaller and weaker than I am now." Eleanor began to walk slowly around the chamber, her cane tapping against the stone floor in a steady rhythm that seemed to command attention. "During her life, she survived a famine that killed millions of people around her. And she survived 2 wars that destroyed entire cities. And she survived a plague that swept across her continent and left corpses piled in the streets." She paused and looked up at Vexthos with an expression that was hard to read. She could not run fast, and she could not fight, and she had no weapons or armor or venom. And by every measure you would use to judge a predator, she was worthless. Then how did she survive? The 4-armed venomous council member asked despite itself. "She could wait," Eleanor said simply. "She could watch her enemies and learn their patterns and find their weaknesses. And she could remember every wrong ever done to her family and pass those memories down to her children and grandchildren." The old woman resumed her slow circuit of the chamber. "There was a man who betrayed her family during the Second War. A man who stole their food and left them to starve while he grew fat. And my grandmother did not try to fight him because she knew she would lose. Weakness." The Morvith sneered. "Patience," Eleanor corrected. "She waited 40 years until that man was old and comfortable and had forgotten all about her. And then she found his grandchildren, and she destroyed everything he had built. And she made sure he knew exactly who was responsible before he died alone and broken." She stopped walking and turned to face the full council. "That is what a human grandmother is capable of when she has been wronged. I want you to understand something very important about my species." Her voice dropped lower, but somehow carried even more clearly. "We are the children and grandchildren of survivors, of creatures who refuse to die no matter what the universe threw at them. And that stubbornness is bred into our very bones." "Pretty words," Vexthos growled. But there was less certainty in his voice than before. "You asked how we cause extinction wherever we go," Eleanor continued. "The answer is simple, and I think it will frighten you more than any display of physical strength ever could." She pointed at the assembled predators with one thin finger. "We do not need to be stronger than you or faster than you or more venomous than you, because we will simply outlast you, and we will learn everything about you while you learn nothing about us. And we will pass that knowledge down through generations until your great-grandchildren face enemies who know every weakness your species has ever had." "That is not how predation works," the Silorax protested. "No," Eleanor agreed. "It is how humans work. I think you are beginning to understand why that should terrify you." The Morvith ambassador slithered forward from its containment area, leaving a trail of smoking acid on the special floor designed to handle its corrosive body. and it loomed over Eleanor with the confidence of a creature that had never met anything it could not dissolve. "Your words are clever," it hissed. "The words can't stop me from reducing you to a puddle of organic soup right here and right now. And all your patience and memory and stubbornness will mean nothing when you are dead." "You are absolutely correct," Eleanor said without stepping back or showing any sign of fear. "You could kill me very easily, and there is nothing I could do to stop you." She held up one thin arm and slowly pushed back the sleeve of her simple clothing, revealing the pale wrinkled skin beneath. And across that skin ran dozens of scars in various shapes and sizes. "May I show you something before you do?" she asked. The Morvith paused, curious despite itself, and the other council members leaned forward to see what the small human was displaying. "These marks tell the story of my body trying to kill itself," Eleanor explained calmly. "This long scar here is from my 4th heart surgery, because the organ that pumps blood through my body decided to stop working properly and had to be cut open and repaired." She traced another set of marks on her arm. "These are from treatments for 3 different cancers, which is what we call it when our own cells rebel against us and try to consume us from the inside. And it happens to humans constantly, and we simply cut out the rebellious parts and keep living." The assembled predators exchanged uncertain glances because the idea of a creature whose own body regularly tried to destroy it was deeply unsettling. "I have broken 11 bones over my lifetime," Eleanor continued, "and each one healed back stronger than it was before because that is how human bodies respond to damage. And the cane I carry is because when I was 9 years old, I was struck by a vehicle weighing over 2,000 kilograms. She smiled faintly. I survived, and the driver of that vehicle did not. And I want you to think about what kind of creature can be hit by something that heavy and simply get back up afterward. You are old," Vexthas observed, "clearly damaged and failing, and yet you speak as if these are accomplishments." "They are," Eleanor replied. "I am 67 years old by Earth's count, which means I have survived 67 trips around my home star. And in that time, my planet has experienced storms and earthquakes and diseases and wars, and I'm still here." She let her sleeve fall back down. "By human standards, I am considered elderly and disabled, too old and broken to be useful in any direct confrontation. And we have a word for creatures like me in my language." "What word?" the Silorax asked. "Grandmother," Eleanor said. And something in the way she spoke that word made it sound like a title of great importance. "And on my world, grandmothers are known for 2 things above all others." She held up one finger. "First, we are known for feeding people. We are known for feeding people, for taking raw ingredients and transforming them into meals that bring families together and create bonds that last for generations." She held up a second finger. "Second, we are known for being absolutely impossible to kill, because we have already survived everything the universe could throw at us, and we are still standing." The Vracthari council member with the venomous spines leaned forward. "You continue living past your breeding age?" it asked with obvious confusion. "You survive beyond the point where you can produce offspring, and your species considers this valuable." "We survive because of it," Eleanor explained. "When we are too old to hunt, we teach the young ones everything we have learned. And when we are too weak to fight, we make plans and strategies instead. And when we are too slow to run, we build traps and prepare ambushes." She looked around the chamber at the assembled apex predators. "You measure strength by what a creature can do right now in this moment. But humans measure strength by what a creature can do across time. And an old human who has spent decades learning and planning is far more dangerous than a young one with strong muscles." "Ridiculous," the Morvith declared. But his voice held less certainty than before. "My grandson wanted to come here today," Eleanor said conversationally. "He is a young man in his military service, tall and strong, and trained in combat. And when he heard that humanity was sending a representative to face the Predator Council, he volunteered immediately. He sounds like a proper warrior, Vexthus acknowledged. Why was he not sent? Because when the decision-makers asked him why he wanted to go, he thought about it for a long moment, and then he said something that made them choose me instead. Eleanor smiled with genuine warmth. He said that if this was likely to be a death sentence, they should send his grandmother instead of him, because she was meaner than he was. The old woman chuckled softly. He was not being disrespectful, and he was not saying that my life was worth less than his, and he was not trying to sacrifice me to save himself. She met Vexthus's compound eyes directly. He was saying that if humanity needed someone to walk into a room full of monsters and come out alive through nothing but spite and stubbornness and the accumulated wisdom of a lifetime, then a grandmother was the obvious choice. And you agreed with this assessment? Vexthus asked. I raised that boy, Eleanor replied, and I taught him everything I know. And the fact that he understood the right answer to that question tells me I did my job well. She patted her cane against the floor. So yes, I agreed to come here and face all of you, because I have been preparing for moments like this my entire life. And I am very good at surviving things that should have killed me. The Silorax had been running a continuous telepathic probe against Eleanor's mind since she entered the chamber. A gentle pressure that most beings never even noticed. And suddenly, it recoiled backward in its suspension field, as if it had touched something that burned counsel, it announced. And its telepathic voice carried a tremor that none of them had ever heard from the normally unshakable psychic predator. There is something you need to know about this human. Every eye and sensor in the room focused on the Silorax with immediate attention. Her mind, the psychic being, continued. I assumed it was empty because I felt nothing remarkable when she first arrived. Just fading memories and old grief and small pleasures like her interest in growing plants. But I was wrong. Explain, Vexthos demanded. Her mind is not empty. It is organized, the Silorax said. Everything in there is filed away in perfect order, labeled and sorted and accessible at a moment's thought. And what I mistook for emptiness was actually efficiency. The floating predator turned its pale form toward Eleanor. She has been studying us since the moment she entered this chamber, and she has been doing it so quietly and carefully that I did not notice until now. Eleanor continued to lean calmly on her cane as if they were discussing the weather. That is what I do, she said simply. I am a xenobiologist, which means I have spent my life studying creatures from other worlds. And I have a particular specialty that I think you should know about. What specialty? The venomous council member asked. Predators, Eleanor replied. I have spent 40 years observing and analyzing and categorizing every predatory species humanity has ever encountered. And I have gotten very good at understanding how they think and move and hunt. She began walking slowly around the chamber again. And this time, the council members watched her with new wariness. For example, she continued, your armor is very impressive, Vexthos, but I count 17 visible joint points where the plates meet. And any of those joints would be vulnerable to a weapon designed to exploit gaps rather than break through solid material. The great Vracthari leader shifted uncomfortably, and several of his blade arms moved to cover the joints she had identified. The Morvith produces acid that can dissolve almost anything. Eleanor went on, but that acid requires moisture to activate properly. And I noticed this chamber has been kept very dry, which tells me that the Morvith representative is actually at a significant disadvantage here compared to its natural environment. The slug-like creature hissed angrily, but did not dispute her observation. The Silorax has powerful telepathic abilities. Eleanor continued, but those abilities require concentration to maintain. And I noticed that when I began speaking at length, the psychic pressure against my mind decreased significantly because it was focusing on listening to my words instead. She turned to face the full council. I have been observing all of you for approximately 15 minutes now. And in that time, I have identified at least 3 potential vulnerabilities in each species represented here. You are lying, one of the council members declared. You cannot possibly have learned that much in such a short time. I did not learn it in 15 minutes, Eleanor corrected gently. I learned most of it over the past 40 years while studying species similar to yours. And the 15 minutes I have spent here simply confirmed which of my existing theories were correct. She let that statement hang in the air for a moment. This is what humans do, she explained. We watch and we learn, and we remember, and we share what we learn with others who watch and learn and remember. And over generations, we build up a body of knowledge that grows larger and more detailed with every passing year. But you will die, the Silorax pointed out. Your individual lifespan is limited, and when you die, your knowledge dies with you. No, Eleanor said firmly. That is the part you do not understand, the part that makes humans different from every species you have ever encountered. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small flat device that glowed softly when she touched it. This contains every paper I have ever written, every observation I have ever made, every theory I have ever developed about predatory species across the galaxy. And when I die, this knowledge will not die with me. Your technology preserves information, Vexthos acknowledged. Many species have such capabilities. It is not just the technology, Eleanor replied. It is the culture, the way we think about knowledge itself. The understanding that what one human learns belongs to all humans and must be passed down to future generations. She tucked the device away. I have students who have studied my work and expanded upon it. And they have students of their own. And somewhere right now, a young human is reading my earliest papers and getting ideas about how to improve upon my theories. The old woman smiled. That young human has never met me and probably never will. But they are my intellectual grandchild, just as surely as my grandson is my biological grandchild. And they will carry my knowledge forward long after my body has returned to the earth. This is why you survive, the Morvis said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in its alien mind. This is why everything survives that we allow to survive, Eleanor corrected. And why nothing survives that we decide must end. She looked at each council member in turn. You wanted to know how humans cause extinction wherever we go. And the answer is that we learn faster than other species can adapt. And we remember longer than other species can evolve. And we share more freely than other species can compete with. Her voice hardened slightly. Every apex predator that has ever faced humanity has made the same mistake, assuming that the individual human in front of them represents the full threat. And by the time they realize that they are actually facing the accumulated knowledge of billions of humans across thousands of years, it is already too late. Eleanor began walking toward the great doors at the end of the chamber, her cane clicking against the stone floor in a steady rhythm that echoed through the sudden silence. And every predator in the room watched her go without moving to stop her. You cannot simply leave, Vexthus finally roared, his voice breaking the spell that had fallen over the council. We have not given you permission to depart. And we have not finished deciding what to do with your species. Eleanor paused and turned back to face them. And in that moment she did not look like a frail old woman anymore, but like something far more dangerous, wearing the shape of a frail old woman. Before I came here, she said calmly, I made certain arrangements with my government and my military, because I am old enough to know that hope is not a strategy and backup plans are always necessary. What arrangements? The Silorax demanded, its telepathic voice sharp with sudden concern. If I do not return to my ship within 6 hours, or if I return but speak a certain phrase that indicates I am under duress, my grandson's vessel will broadcast a data packet to every inhabited system in the galaxy. Eleanor smiled pleasantly. That data packet contains comprehensive biological analyses of every species represented on this council, including detailed information about weaknesses and vulnerabilities and optimal strategies for hunting each of you. The chamber erupted in angry shouts and hissing and telepathic screams of outrage. But Eleanor simply stood calmly and waited for the noise to die down. "You would not dare," the Morvis snarled. "Such information in the wrong hands could lead to the extinction of any species on this council." "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "It could. And I want you to think very carefully about what that tells you about humanity." She began counting on her thin fingers. "First, it tells you that we have been studying you for long enough to compile that information, which means we have been watching you far longer than you realized." She raised a second finger. "Second, it tells you that we were willing to send a single old woman into a room full of apex predators because we were confident that she had the leverage to walk back out again." A third finger. "Third, it tells you that we understand your value system well enough to know that threatening your species' survival would be more effective than threatening my individual life." She lowered her hand. "You wanted to know how humans became apex predators without claws or venom or psychic powers. And this is your answer. We learn and we plan and we share, and we never ever forget a slight against us." Vexthus stepped forward, his massive form blocking the path to the door. "And if we simply kill you now, before you can return to your ship?" he asked. "Your arrangements would activate, and our weaknesses would be broadcast regardless. So what is to stop us from ensuring you never leave this room alive?" "Nothing," Eleanor admitted. "You could absolutely kill me right now and doom your species in the process, and I would be unable to stop you." She met his compound eyes without flinching. "But I do not think you will." "Why not?" "Because you are predators," Eleanor explained. "And predators understand cost and benefit and risk assessment. And killing me gains you nothing while letting me go loses you nothing except a small amount of pride." She gestured at the council members behind him. "More importantly, I do not think any of your fellow council members want to risk their species' survival just so you can maintain your dignity. And I think if you tried to kill me right now, several of them might stop you." The council members exchanged uneasy glances, and Eleanor could see calculations happening behind their alien eyes as they weighed their own survival against their alliance with the Vracthari. "There is one more thing I should tell you," Eleanor added, reaching back into her pocket. Every predator in the room tensed. She pulled out the small bag of seeds she had been eating earlier and held it up for them to see. "These seeds come from a plant called capsicum that grows on Earth, and humans have been cultivating it for thousands of years. And do you know why we grow it? Food?" The Silarax guessed. "In a manner of speaking," Eleanor agreed. "The capsicum plant produces a chemical compound as a defense mechanism, a substance that causes intense burning pain in any mammal that tries to eat it. And the plant evolved this defense specifically to prevent creatures from consuming its seeds." She opened the bag and popped another seed into her mouth, chewing with obvious enjoyment. "The burning sensation this chemical causes is agonizing to every mammalian species on Earth, and any sensible creature would learn to avoid it after the first exposure." She swallowed and smiled. "Humans eat it recreationally, for flavor, because we enjoy the sensation of our mouths being on fire. And we have spent thousands of years breeding the plants to make the burning even more intense." The council members stared at her in horrified fascination. "We are the species that discovered a plant that evolved specifically to cause us pain. And our response was to cultivate it and make it hurt more, and then put it in everything we eat," Eleanor continued. "And I want you to understand what that says about the kind of creatures we are." She walked past Vexthos, who made no move to stop her, and continued toward the doors. "Humanity accepts your invitation to join the Predator Council." She called back over her shoulder. "We will send a permanent representative next month. and I suggest strongly that you treat them with respect." She reached the doors and paused one final time, because whoever we send will have been raised by grandmothers. And grandmothers teach their children and grandchildren everything they know about how to survive in a dangerous universe. The doors began to open, and Eleanor stepped through into the light beyond, including how to hold a grudge across generations and how to smile politely while planning someone's complete destruction. The doors closed behind her with a boom that echoed through the chamber, and the 12 most terrifying predators in the known galaxy sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Finally, the Silurak spoke, its telepathic voice quiet and thoughtful. "I believe," it said slowly, "that we may have made a significant error in judgment regarding the human species." Vextho settled back onto his throne with a heaviness that had nothing to do with his physical weight. "I believe," he replied, "that we should be very careful about how we treat their representative next month." The Morvith made a sound that might have been agreement, and perhaps, it added, "we should avoid giving any of their grandmothers a reason to remember our names." The council sat in contemplative silence as somewhere beyond the great hall, a small human woman walked back to her ship, eating seeds from a plant that had evolved to cause pain, smiling quietly to herself because she had just taught the most dangerous predators in the galaxy a lesson they would never forget. Humanity had been invited to join the Predator Council, and they had sent their weakest to accept the invitation. No one who witnessed what happened that day ever made the mistake of underestimating a human again, especially not the ones with white hair and wrinkled skin and patient smiles who called themselves grandmothers.